Picture this. It's February 1943. In a frozen field near Rotterdam, German soldiers are sifting through the wreckage of a crashed British bomber. And inside all that twisted metal, they find something weird. It's a copper cylinder, no bigger than a coffee mug. To them, it's probably just some random piece of junk. But this little object is about to be sent to the most advanced research labs in Berlin, and it's going to deliver a shock to the German high command that's bigger than any bomb could. Why? Because this little cylinder is about to prove that Germany isn't just falling behind in the tech race. It's a full decade behind in its understanding of the laws of physics. And the story of how that happened, well, it's a lesson that still echoes today. So let's get into it.
So this little device lands on a lab bench at Telefunken in Berlin. Professor Leo Brandt, one of Germany's top scientific minds, he hooks it up to his instruments. And when he sees the readings, he just can't believe it. He probably checked his gear and then checked it again. This quote right here, it isn't just a technical note. It's the sound of someone's entire worldview just shattering. Think about it. Brandt and his team were the absolute masters of their field. Their mathematical models were like scripture. They defined what was possible. And the math was crystal clear. You just could not generate that much power at such a high frequency. It was a law of physics. And yet, here's this thing sitting on his bench, just quietly breaking that law right in front of him. That's a terrifying moment when a lifetime of certainty just evaporates. And this is the number that broke their reality: 10,000 watts. At a frequency so high, German scientists had already decided it was completely useless for any serious radar. Now, to put that in perspective, their own top-secret radar prototypes, we're talking room-sized machines, they were struggling to squeeze out maybe 50 watts, 100 on a really good day. This little British device, something you could hold in your hand, was pumping out hundreds of times more power. And it was doing it so elegantly, so stably, they couldn't even dream of it. It wasn't just a little better, it was like something from the future.
Which brings us to the big one. The question that must have haunted the German leadership for the rest of the war, and it's fascinated historians ever since. How did this happen? How could a nation with Nobel Prize-winning physicists, world-class engineers, the very country that basically pioneered radar, find itself so completely and catastrophically outmaneuvered? We're not talking about a small lead here, like a slightly faster plane or a bigger gun. No, this was a generational gap, a fundamental chasm in understanding. And the answer, it turns out, is more about psychology than it is about physics.
The whole story really starts 3 years earlier, back in 1940. It's this critical year where two nations, both under the crushing pressure of war, had to make a really basic choice about how they were going to innovate. And those two choices sent them down two totally different paths. One path, it led to stagnation. It was rooted in this belief that they already had all the answers. The other path, though, it led to a technological revolution, and it was born from the terrifying realization that they were about to lose.
Just look at this timeline. It tells you everything. Over on the right, June 1940, Germany is on top of the world. France has fallen. There's this feeling of total invincibility, that the war is practically won. And in that moment of supreme confidence, Hitler issues a decree. No more funding for long-term R&D. If a project can't deliver a weapon to the front lines within 2 years, it gets nothing. It's a decision that comes from pure arrogance. Now look to the left. Just a few months earlier, you have Britain. Their back is against the wall. They're facing invasion. They're not confident, they are terrified. And that fear forces them to pour money into crazy, high-risk, high-reward research, basically praying for a miracle. And it's that desperation that leads two university researchers, John Randall and Harry Boot, to invent the very device that would leave Professor Brandt speechless in his lab. And this chart just lays it all out. You've got these two completely different philosophies. German science, driven by what historians have called theoretical arrogance, truly believed their math-defined reality. So they focused on just perfecting what they already had, making their existing long-wavelength radar a little bit better, a little more powerful, but they never questioned the basic idea. The British, on the other hand, driven by sheer necessity, they didn't have that luxury. They threw out the rulebook. They tinkered, they experimented, they tried stuff that their own math said was a long shot. And by doing that, they didn't just improve radar, they completely reinvented it from the ground up.
So this wasn't just some interesting thing in a lab. This one piece of technology, the cavity magnetron, gave the Allies an almost magical advantage across the entire war. It was like a secret weapon that was invisible, silent, and just unbelievably deadly. Let's break down what that devastating impact actually looked like on the battlefield.
So in the Battle of the Atlantic, U-boat captains who used to own the night, surfacing without a care in the world to recharge their batteries, they suddenly found themselves being hunted out of the darkness by Allied planes. The safe ocean became a killing field. In the air war over Germany,
Allied bombers with H-2S ground-mapping radar could now literally see coastlines, rivers, even the outlines of cities through 10,000 feet of solid clouds. That turned inaccurate bombing runs into devastatingly precise strikes. And in the skies over Britain at night, Allied fighters could find and destroy German bombers with a clarity and at a range that, to the German pilots, it must have felt like witchcraft.
And just look at the practical difference this made on a single airplane. The best German night fighter radar, called Liechtenstein, needed this huge, clunky set of mattress antennas strapped to the plane's nose. It created so much drag it could slow the plane down by 50 kilometers per hour. In a dogfight, that is a death sentence. The British, using the new Magnetron, had a small, neat little dish hidden inside the nose cone with almost zero impact on performance. So their planes were faster, they were more agile, and their radar saw the world in high definition, while the Germans were looking at a fuzzy, indistinct blur. They were literally fighting a different war.
So when faced with this undeniable, just terrifying proof of how far behind they were, the German high command panicked. They launched this frantic, top-secret mission to catch up. They pulled together a special team, codenamed it Arbeitsgemeinschaft Rotterdam, the Rotterdam Working Group, with one desperate goal: figure out how this thing works and build us one, like yesterday.
This quote from Dr. Otto Hottenberg, one of the engineers on that project, man, it's just devastating. As they carefully took the Rotterdam device apart, a second, even more demoralizing truth dawned on them. This wasn't some fragile lab prototype. The quality, the precision engineering, the design, it was clearly a mature, mass-produced piece of hardware. The shock wasn't just that the British had invented it. The real shock was that they had perfected it. That's the moment they realized they weren't just a few years behind in a race. The Allies were on a completely different racetrack, and they were already generations ahead.
And that's when the true, terrifying depth of the problem really hit home. This wasn't just a knowledge gap you could solve with a few brilliant physicists in a lab. See, Germany could eventually figure out the science. The real problem was an industrial chasm. Because knowing how something works is a completely different universe from having the industrial base to actually build millions of them.
Take a look at these numbers. They tell the entire story. After 3 months of frantic, top-priority work, the entire industrial might of Nazi Germany had managed to produce four working copies of the Magnetron. Meanwhile, Britain alone was churning out over 200 of them every single month. And American factories, because the British had shared the tech back in 1940, were getting ready to produce thousands. Germany hadn't just lost a scientific race, they'd lost a war of production they never even knew they were fighting.
So why does a story from 80 years ago still matter? I mean, why are we talking about this now? Because the story of the Rotterdam device is so much more than just military history. It's this powerful, timeless case study about innovation, about strategy, and about the fatal danger of being so sure you have all the answers that you stop asking the really important questions.
First, it's a huge warning against what we called theoretical arrogance. The German physicists were brilliant, no doubt, but their models told them something was impossible, so they just stopped looking. The British just kept tinkering until it worked. Second, it shows the massive difference between knowing something and being able to do something. You can understand the principle, but if you can't build it, scale it, and make it reliable, that knowledge is strategically worthless. And finally, it proves that desperation, that feeling of having your back against the wall, can be a way more powerful engine for true innovation than confidence and victory ever will be.
But here's the most amazing lesson of all. The part that shows you just how unpredictable innovation really is. Because that top-secret, war-winning technology, the cavity magnetron, the device that blew the minds of Germany's top scientists, it is the direct ancestor of the box that sits in your kitchen right now. Every single time you heat up your coffee or warm up leftovers, you're using a direct descendant of the Rotterdam device. A technology that was born to map cities for destruction now just heats up our dinner. You can't get a better swords to plowshare story than that.
And that leaves us with one last big question. Back in 1942, the smartest people in Germany were absolutely certain that high-power shortwave radar was a scientific fantasy. They had the math to prove it, and they were 100% wrong. So the question for us for today is this: what revolutionary ideas are we dismissing right now because our current models tell us they're impossible? What breakthroughs are we ignoring because they don't fit our neat and tidy theories? What is our Rotterdam device?